Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. Since 9/11, we have witnessed the left's transparent solidarity with our jihadist enemy. Because the left controls our culture, a clear surrender to Islamic supremacism is now taking place in the West, a catastrophic turn of events that shifted into high gear under the Obama administration. This new book, Jihadist Psychopath, focuses on our voluntary suicide in the face of the enemy's onslaught, uncovering its root cause through a groundbreaking and original perspective and offering a brand new lens through which we can more accurately understand the terror war. Jihadist Psychopath unveils the harrowing world of psychopathy, and demonstrates how Islamic supremacism is charming and devouring Western civilization, just as an individual psychopath would hunt their prey. There's a war being waged on America and the West. The aggressors, Islamic supremacists. Their method, duplicating the sinister methodology of psychopaths who routinely charm, seduce, capture, and devour their prey. In this new book, Jamie Glazov reveals every element of the formula by which the psychopath subjugates his victim. The Islamic supremacist likewise uses to ensnare and subjugate non-Muslims. And in the same way that the victim of the psychopath is complicit in his own destruction, Western civilization is now embracing and enabling its own conquest and consumption. Jamie Glazov holds a PhD in history with a specialty in Russian, U.S., and Canadian foreign policy. He is the editor of Front Page magazine, the author of United in Hate, The Left's Romance with Tyranny and Terror, and the host of the web TV show The Glazov Gang. Here to talk about his new book, Jihadist Psychopath, how he is charming, seducing, and devouring us, is Jamie Glazov. Jamie, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, it's great to meet you. I've wanted to meet you and interview you for a very long time. You are a clarion, clear sound in a world of confusion. And as we watch what's happening in Washington and who's getting front page press, it's nothing more than a jihadist psychopath who is trying to pull us into, in the world of psychiatry, there is a condition called folie à deux, and it is a fantasy shared by two. It's as if you and I are best friends, or I was married, and my wife, I thought I was Napoleon, she believes she was Josephine. We have this new psychiatric condition that everybody wants us to jump into, this fantasy shared by a nation, that Islam is a religion of peace, that words which are hijacked from, not from the Quran, but from the Talmud, that says if you kill one, you kill the world. Kill one innocent, you kill the world. That's straight out of the Talmud. That's not out of the Quran. And this is a psychopathic agenda that we've watched advance from the 55 nations surrounding Israel, advancing its way all the way across Europe and coming to a city near you, and we have lulled into this false sense of security that it can't happen here. We're too smart. We're too intelligent. And you know what? The psychopath and the sociopath continue to feed that to us, and you've exposed them for what they are. You've called them for what they are. But America, are you ready to embrace the truth? Jamie Glazov, how did you come to this, your background, your status coming to this country, being one who is so devoted to exposing the truth that you'd be willing to be persecuted, maligned, and attacked for your vision, and you are a visionary and a truth teller? How did all this come about?
Well, thank you so much. Well, I guess the story begins with my parents, who were dissidents in the former Soviet Union. Dad and Mom stood up against the evil empire, and that's a 20-hour story. To make a long story short, we were able to escape that monstrosity, and we landed in the United States when I was a little boy, and I fell in love with America, and I love this country. And I want to protect this country. This is a very precious, very treasurable experiment, the greatest experiment on earth. And I love freedom. And so as I was growing older, I began to see these species of people who I realized were called leftists, and they hated my parents. They hated what we had to say. They were saying that where we came from was a beautiful, wonderful place, and that where we were now was an awful, oppressive place. And I began to analyze these people, and I dedicated my life to fighting them, because these were the people that made excuses for Mao and Stalin and the Khmer Rouge. And they wanted to bring what we escaped here. And today it's the same thing. We escaped the Soviet Union, but now the Soviet Union has come to us. And so I dedicate myself to fighting for oppressed people who suffer under totalitarianism. And that battle of mine has now switched, in the sense of, while I was dedicated to fighting and educating, hoping to educate people about the threat of communism, as you know, the main threat now on many realms is Sharia law, Islamic law, and jihad. That's the great threat to the West today. And I dedicate my life to wanting to protect America from that threat, and also protecting all people who suffer under its totalitarian chains.
You know, Jamie, you and I have a very similar background. My family escaped from the pogroms and the shtetls of Eastern Europe. My grandparents came from a country called Galicia, which was southern Poland, western Ukraine, annexed by the Prudo-Russian Empire. In 1904, they came to America. My father, in 1934, from pre-communist Hungary, to come to America to escape this oppression of communism, of socialism, and an oppressive regime that said you either line up with our ideology or you die. Now we see in America the same agenda being advanced under Sharia, under an advancement. And, you know, in every case, we're lulled into this belief, San Bernardino being the most obvious condition, of all Muslims are nice until they're not. All believers in the Quran are nice until they're not. And this young man that perpetrated this crime in San Bernardino, 5 years of stellar neighbor, 5 years of stellar member of the community, nicest guy you ever want to meet. And while he and his wife were plotting the demise of the innocents, this is the primary example of the psychopath, of the sociopath, of the hidden agenda, of the condition that exists in those that, and the reason that I am so keenly aware is that it's the most unified group body in the world. 1.25 to 1.5 billion people that believe in one document, the Quran. They believe in one teacher, Muhammad, the only prophet of God. And whether or not they are practicing, they're observant, they're non-observant, when the population hits the tipping point of 8% in any community of Islam, of Muslims, they all line up behind the teaching of the Quran. They all adopt and they subjugate themselves, or they too are under the penalty of death. And that is something that Americans are grossly unaware of. And as they watch the fall of Great Britain, of London, they watch the fall of Germany under Angela Merkel, Sub-Saharan Africa, all of the Middle East, Indonesia, Malaysia, these countries that have fallen under this 8% and greater to the point of 88%, 90%. It is a sociological phenomena that is predictable. We can look at the numbers and see 2, 4, 6, 8% is the tipping point. When France hit 8%, we saw an entire change in the landscape of France. And yet we as arrogant Americans think it cannot happen here. And you are a clarion voice to say, not only can it happen here, it is happening here, and you have to be on the lookout and be prepared for this.
Absolutely, it is happening here, and it's very sad what's happening. Just recently, as you know, Judge Janine, just had the courage to say something that's just common sense, to say it on Fox News, and you can see something's happening over there. And don't get me wrong, I love Fox News. I love their bravery. And in many ways, in terms of the establishment media, it's really the last voice. You know, heroes over there like Hannity and Tucker Carlson and Judge Jeanine, etc. But something's going on. They're not talking about Islam, and you can see something's happening. And now Judge Jeanine has simply said a very brave thing, a very true thing, and simply asking about Ilhan Omar, about the hijab, and about dedication to Sharia and what it all means. And Fox News disciplines her and denounces her and reprimands her. This is a turning point on many levels, because it's now showing that even Fox News is afraid and reluctant to literally make a threat assessment. We cannot make a threat assessment. We have a threat and we cannot assess it. And it's a very, very sad day. And the tide is accelerating, and it's not a good one.
Tammy, you and I have chosen to go the route of web TV. It's a medium that cannot be censored. It's a medium that cannot be obligated by sponsors and by commercials and special interests. I have a clarion voice that is clear that the agenda of the Bible, of God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Messiah coming, and of course I am persecuted in Israel and in the Jewish community for being Jewish and believing that Jesus is the Messiah. So I stand in this ministry of suffering, of those that are willing to be a clarion voice and saying, look, we're going to call it what it is. I didn't create this problem. You didn't create this problem. But if we don't put it under a lens and make America aware, then what happens is we fall prey to it, and it is insidious. It is a psychiatric condition that is, as you call it, the jihadist psychopath. Not every Muslim is a jihadist. Right? It's just like saying that not every Arab is a Muslim and not every Muslim is an Arab. In order to be an Arab, you've got to come from Arabia. If you come from Iran, you're Persian. If you come from Turkey, you're Turkish. If you come from Iraq, you're an Iraqi. You're not an Arab. If you're an Arab, you're from Arabia. So we have all of these distortions in the West because we're oh so smart, oh so educated, and oh so welcoming to every different ideology and lifestyle. But what we've done is we've opened the gates to tolerance, which has now made it we are so tolerant that we're about to become our own worst enemy.
Well, absolutely. And this is how evil works. And this is how evil uses different ideologies that are related to one another to work together. So you've got one army that has come into the house, and they've gone up the stairs and they've opened up certain doors, and they're looking out the window saying, hey, now you can come in now. And so that's what the left has done. And so the left, with that whole war that it wages against God's creation, that war that it wages in terms of creating a classless society and spreading these myths, this, what I call in my book the utopian virus, and this fantasy of equality and sameness, and everybody will be the same and everybody will be equal. And what they've done is very shrewd now, because they've spread all of this so much to the point now where all faiths are equal as well, and all belief systems are equal. And if you say anything about it, you're a racist and a white supremacist. And people are so terrified of being called those words, and justifiably so. It's so sad that I even have to say this. But we're all against racism. We're all against white supremacism. It's a given that we're against hatred. It's a given also that we don't believe in equality in the sense of that all people are autonomous, divine created, sacred human beings in the eyes of God, etc. We're talking about something else in terms of equality this is for another discussion, but it should be common sense. We know that some hockey players will be better than others. We know that some artists are better than others. And so we believe in the success and talent of human beings. But anyway, that's another discussion. But what the left has done now is that it is now allowing a totalitarian ideology to not just infiltrate our culture and society, but to start taking over. And our eyes are blinded and our hands are tied behind our back, because even to say one word, as Judge Janine did, about a hijab or about Sharia law, which is just common sense. It's a totalitarian ideology. And just to say even anything about this is now automatically seen as quote unquote racist and bigoted, etc. So they're very, very shrewd, very, very clever in how they work. And the left and the Islamic supremacists are working together 24/7. Every second of the day they fight for destruction. And the tragedy with conservatives is that many of them simply have no clue what a culture war is, and they do not fight it. And it's tragic.
Mind share is being captured by the liberal left, where they're dominating the narrative by creating the minor position has become the major point, and they've been advancing this message that says that if you speak against what we know to be true, which is that in the Quran it talks about jihad through migration and immigration, move into their countries, prosper, have 6 children to their 1 children, begin to dominate through immigration and migration. Why are they migrating to Norway? Why are they migrating to Sweden? Why is it that they want to have a child where there is somebody coming out of the Middle East who is having relations with a blonde-haired, blue-eyed? Because how do we get away from profiling, racial profiling? How do we get past this? Because if somebody has dark hair and blue eyes, do we pass them through? And how do we test their ideology? In the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1952, it was implemented by the federal government to say that if you swore allegiance to a higher authority, the United States Constitution, you are not welcome in our borders. This was passed by the United States Congress and was the law and is the law of the land, amended in the 90s. When my father and his family came to this country, they said, we will not swear allegiance to the Tsar, we will not swear allegiance to the government of Hungary. When my family came from Western Ukraine, Southern Poland, Western Ukraine, they said, we will swear allegiance to the United States. When the San Bernardino attack came on television that night at 10 o'clock p.m., as this story was unfolding on San Bernardino, the head of CARE out of Texas got on television and said these words very clearly, that the Council on American Islamic Relations believes that Sharia is the highest law and there is no law greater. The Constitution is not greater than Sharia, and that Muslims coming to America will not commit themselves to another set of rules and regulations. They are here under Sharia, and that is the law of the land. And people it just didn't pierce them. It wasn't a way, to me, it was a clanging gong. It was a siren in the middle of the night saying, how can this man get on national television and claim that there is a population coming to America that's going to commit itself to an agenda which is not the American way, which is not the Constitution of the United States, and will advance their own court system, their own legal system, their own no-go zones, their own set of rules and regulations, which is separate from the Constitution of the United States. And we're seeing it play out in Dearborn, Michigan. We're seeing it play out in countries that are mimicking the same kind of Sharia courts that we're seeing in Paris, France, the same kind of Sharia courts we're seeing in London, England, which is an English-speaking country, which was based on the values of a Christ-centered community. No longer the mayor of London, Muslim, the court system now divided between the parliamentary court system and the Sharia court system. And we're seeing this come to America, and you and I and several others are very vocal about what's being taught in the mosques, that the imams throughout America, and that's why they don't allow recordings in. They don't allow people in. But we know people who are Muslims that are welcome to go in and listen to these messages. And the message is the advancement of jihad on American soil. And people are not aware that this is an agenda. And we are going to see, as there is this jihadist psychopath walking in the streets of America. And a friend of mine wrote a book called How Facebook enables Islamic Jihad, because they allowed all of these social media postings. They're censoring Dr. Michael Brown for his Christian stand on homosexuality, and YouTube has taken down his whole channel. But you can go out and recruit people for ISIS. You can go out and recruit people for your local jihadist activities. You can put bomb-making instructions on the web, and that's not going to be blocked, and that seems to be okay. Nobody seems to be sounding the alarm except for Jamie Glazov, Rabbi Walker, Nani Darwish, Brigitte Gabriel, and a few others, and we're dismissed as being Islamophobes. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm proud to stand on the Word of God, knowing that the victory belongs to the Lord, but I'm one that has an obligation to truth, as you have an obligation to truth. Why is America lulled into such a false sense of fear that if they speak out, this is how the founding fathers created us, was freedom of speech, but yet people are taking advantage of that and silencing our voices?
Well, absolutely, Rabbi Eric, and it's very sad. And totalitarians are very shrewd how they operate, and they know the weakness of people, and of many people, of perhaps most people, who are under siege. And this is what my book is about. And Kenneth Levin, for instance, wrote The Oslo Syndrome. Fascinating book, and he documented what happens to people when they are under siege and the delusions that they begin to engage in. And this is, of course, connected to Stockholm Syndrome. And I'm dedicated to this phenomenon, and it's exactly what's happening. It happened to the Israeli Jews during Oslo Syndrome. Many Israelis, especially on the left, were just thinking, oh, just a little bit more land, just a little bit more money, and we'll just give a few more hugs, and then Hamas will love us, or, whatever the Palestinian cult manifested itself in that time and in what figures. And we're seeing that same thing happen to the Kafir today in the West, that, if we just, stop our colonialism and stop our racism and stop the patriarchy and stop, whatever it is, stop the global warming and give more jobs and all of this nonsense and foolishness, that they believe that somehow this ideology will stop hating us. And there's a lot of narcissism in that also, because many people want to believe that they are part of the script. They can't give up control. They can't accept that there's a book out there that simply says that its members have to kill you. They have to believe that somehow they can change it, just the way that a battered wife, tragically enough, believes that maybe if she just makes the spaghetti a little bit better the next time, that she won't be abused. And there's a Stockholm Syndrome going on, and in our culture, in our society, it's accelerating. And the deceiver knows how to deceive. And the deceiver also knows that the victim himself or herself also is salivating to be deceived as well.
Jamie, how entrenched is the Muslim Brotherhood into our government? I remember seeing a picture from 1952 of Dwight Eisenhower inviting 100 representatives from the Muslim Brotherhood into the Oval Office because he wanted to first meet firsthand the sheikhs of Saudi Arabia, the sheikhs of the Arab nations that we were so dependent on oil from. And so as he took office in the year that I was born, he had a gathering of the Muslim Brotherhood. And they were proud to call themselves the Muslim Brotherhood at that time. And he had a gathering. There's a photo opportunity. You can get the photo online of him with about 125 representatives of the Muslim Brotherhood meeting with the President of the United States. And it didn't stop there, because there's now been an infiltration deep into the deep state, deep into corporate America, banking institutions, insurance companies, people of great influence that are peddling great influence, that are greatly influenced by the funding to advance the cause. We are the last holdout. We are the last vestige. And we are declared enemy as the great Satan of Iran under the Shiite agenda to dominate and to advance the caliphate. The Sunnis are just as committed to advancing their headship in the caliphate, and their agenda is playing out in a more subtle way, but there are flare-ups that give us an indication into the underlying psychosis. And that's exactly what you identify in your book, is what is the motivating psychosis, and how this is the Svengali, this is the snake charmer that's come along into our society and kind of put us in this hypnotic state that says that we're being racist, or we're being Islamophobe, or we're being discriminatory in making these statements. And we have a president that says, let's watch our borders, because there's an enemy who's coming after us, and everybody's up in arms about that. But the truth is, the conservative mind knows this is the only way that America can stand, is to stand with Israel and to stand against the advancement of the Islamic agenda in America.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, you mentioned San Bernardino, the jihadist massacre there. What a tragedy. Well, look, Stephen Coughlin has written a book, Catastrophic Failure, masterpiece, and everybody's got to read that.
Yes.
And he documents step by step how, especially under the Obama administration, the Muslim penetration and infiltration occurred of our society, of our government, etc. And I synthesize a lot of Stephen Coughlin's work in my book, and it's just a tragic situation. Imagine, Rabbi Eric, imagine a situation that during the Cold War, we were consulting the KGB on how to best fight the Cold War. The enemies of the communist system are not allowed to talk to our FBI and CIA, but the KGB is. And that's the situation. That was the situation under Obama. I mean, what was Mohammed Ali Biari doing on the Homeland Advisory Security Council? I mean, it's just that's just one name to begin with. You know, I suggest and let people look his name up, Mohammed Ali Biari. Just ask yourself, what was this person doing in the DHS? But look, Phil Haney.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Phil Haney. See something, say nothing. I was just going to mention his name to you.
You know, just one example. Phil Haney, DHS officer, conducting an investigation into the Islamists moving in and out of the country, investigating the threats to this country. And the Muslim Brotherhood, which penetrated the government, of course, under Obama, with his enabling and oversight, you know, they don't like what he's doing. And even in 2011, they told the Obama administration, let us see your documents. Let's see the intelligence agency training manuals. We want to see all of them. And they said, take out all of these references to Islam and jihad, etc. And the Obama administration obliged. They took out all references to Islam, jihad, etc. So we can't do what Sun Tzu taught everybody to do in a war, is to know thy enemy, label thy enemy. We cannot even make a threat assessment because we cannot say the word. And thank God Trump has turned that around. But let's just go back for a second again, because tremendous damage was done because of this during that time. Is that so we couldn't say Islam. We couldn't say jihad. FBI can't say it. CIA can't say it. Like, is there any surprise about this Boston Marathon massacre, about Orlando? But just to get back to San Bernardino, one example is that the Obama people came in and shut down Phil Haney's investigation. And then Saeed Farouk and Tashin Malik engaged in that massacre in San Bernardino. And it turns out that Phil Haney, as he himself says, was investigating the circles and the people and the environment in which Saeed and Tashin were operating. If his investigation had not been shut down, that massacre would not have occurred because they would have got to them beforehand. That's just one example of how jihad denial enables jihad. The same way that Holocaust denial enables Holocaust. The same way that Gulag denial enables Gulag. The same way jihad denials enables jihad. It's a bloody thing. Well, the Obama administration has blood on its hands in San Bernardino and in so many other places. And yeah, the Muslim Brotherhood infiltrated, it penetrated, and that dirty, dirty, filthy, totalitarian terrorist swamp is, it's gained power in our culture. It controls our boundaries of discourse. It controls Hollywood, academia, and unfortunately, they're entrenched in the government. And Trump has a lot of fighting to do to try to clean it all up.
Well, if it's even possible. We're talking with Jamie Glazov, author of the newly released book, Jihadist Psychopath, How He's Charming, Seducing, and Devouring Us. If you have any concerns about the agenda of the advancement of Sharia in the United States, in the Western culture, including Europe, and we've watched the complete demise, the fall of the power, the world power of what once was our NATO partners, is completely ineffective. They opened their borders. Angela Merkel bringing 1 million in and regrets it. England, Great Britain brought in millions and regrets it. Every nation in Europe that has brought in and opened up their doors for refugees regrets it and are faced with a tremendous problem with terrorism, acts of terrorism, new laws being passed, go and no-go zones, new Sharia law, new Sharia courts, new Sharia leadership in America. I've been telling you now, America, for 14 years, that you are going to see that when we hit the tipping point of 2%, that we're going to start to see representation in Congress, and they're going to be the most vocal members of Congress, not the senior representative elected from Alabama, not the senior elected representative from Georgia, but the senior representative from the hot spots, the embedded, the entrenched, and they are migrating to these communities to build the demographic that's going to allow them to have representation for that constituency and go to the polls and use the system that's in place to advance their cause. And we are asleep at the wheel. Jamie Glazov says, wake up, America. Your day is at hand, and if you don't do something about it now, it's going to be too late. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about leftist feminists turning their back on Muslim women, girls suffering under Islamic gendered apartheid, and what that's going to look like in America when our civil rights, yours and mine, are being violated and we are being persecuted for what has been granted to us as a constitutional right. We can no longer exercise it. It's limited to the few and to the vocal, and now to the Islamist, who is now dominating Congress's time. We'll be right back. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible and Prophecy Revealed, simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Jamie Glazov of the Glazov Gang, author of Jihadist Psychopath, How He is Charming, Seducing, and Devouring Us. Jamie, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Reverend Rabbi Eric.
Jamie, the Muslim Brotherhood has infiltrated America to the point where even this Mueller investigation into Russian collusion is a way of distracting us from looking at the agenda of Donald Trump restoring the sovereignty of America. And the greatest enemy to the sovereignty of America is not the socialist, is not the Bernie Sanders. It is the Islamist who is looking to break down the walls and barriers, to bring in an ideology into our country, which is going to be the demise, the downfall. I believe that the Antichrist will come out of the ranks of Islam. I believe that we have an enemy that's rising up against us and will devour so many people who are asleep. Your book talks about the amazing story of how the United States government hired radical Muslims to work at the State Department, the CIA, the DIA. We take a look at this situation where a Pakistani operative is hired by the Democratic National Committee, and nothing is done to Debbie Wasserman Schultz for leaking national secrets, to giving access to State Department confidential and classified information, and nothing is done to her. Nothing is done to Hillary Clinton, who has parlayed with every leader around the world to allow this to come into this country. Barack Hussein Obama, to me, is one of the, he makes Patrick Henry look like a baby when it comes to being a terrorist and someone who is an enemy of the state. How did we get to this point? I know it was subtle. I know it was one person at a time, but it's no longer one person, it's pervasive.
Well, absolutely, absolutely, Rabbi Eric. KGB set down a very strong foundation. You know, they had the whole plan of, you know, propaganda, corrupting the youth, getting into our schools and everything, and that very much weakened this culture and society. And in my book, I talk about, again, this need to delude oneself and this need to be intoxicated with the lie. And, you know, we know how evil works too. You know, often evil doesn't come with that scary, evil, malicious face. It comes as the truth, but just slightly blurred. And so, for instance, today when we have CARE and ISNA and MSA and these Muslim Brotherhood front groups and their interfaith dialogue that they're engaging in, and let's say when they approach the Christians that are just salivating to hear the lies, just salivating to hear the deception, and the interfaith dialoguers, you want to call them that, will say, you know, and this is, by the way, the Jihadist Psychopath. I explain how psychopaths work because during the charming, seducing stage, they have this tactic of we are alike tactic. We share the same things. You know, the serpent did that with Eve in the Garden of Eden in terms of I'm doing this for your interest tactic, pretending that what you're doing is for the person's interest when you're really engaged in their downfall. But the psychopath also involves and includes the we are a lot alike stage tactic. And today we see this interfaith dialogue where, you know, the Islamic supremacists say to the Christians, you love Jesus, we love Jesus. You respect Jesus, we respect Jesus too. See, this is the we are a lot alike tactic, this tactic that psychopaths use. Now, the brave Christians who are willing to face the truth and that they know that there's a battle ahead and that are courageous and noble will say right away, oh, you love Jesus and we love Jesus? If you don't mind me asking, did Jesus Christ die on the cross for our sins? Is Jesus Christ a member of the Holy Trinity? Is Jesus Christ divine? And boy, the deceivers don't like that. They run away right away. But you see, as you well know, Reverend Rabbi Eric, if you don't confront them with that truth, then this is where the brainwashing ensues. And I'm just using one example of what's happening, is that there's this deception going on, and a very large percentage of people want to avoid that conflict and battle. They want that sweet little candy given to them where the deceiver says everything will be okay. Like when Muhammad Atta on the plane said, if you don't resist and be quiet, everything will be okay. But guess what? Everything wasn't okay on that plane.
You know, it's interesting that while you're saying that, I'm thinking of Nancy Pelosi sitting there with the ash on her forehead talking about how great Catholic she is. And the Pope and Ahmed Al-Tayeb 2 weeks ago in the United Arab Emirates signed a declaration of peace, freedom, and women's rights between the Pope, representing all of Catholicism, and the Imam, that says that they issued a strong condemnation of terrorism and violence. God does not want his name to be used to terrorize people. The document on human fraternity for world peace and living together, signed by the Pope and the Green Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmed Al-Tayeb. It's a milestone in relations between Christianity and Islam, but represents a message with strong impact on the international scene. That means every American Catholic who lines up behind the Pope is going to say, listen, we're going to be embracing to our Muslim brothers, because the Pope says we're to live in peace with our brothers. Therefore, we're going to open up doors of opportunity for them to come into our churches, to worship with us, to read from their holy book, and to show us the similarities, and to embrace them when we know that the agenda of taqiyya, the agenda of me being able to tell you anything I want to tell you, to advance the cause of Islam, so that you can be subjected to the tenets of Islam, and that ultimately, if you do not bend your knee to Muhammad, I think that the greatest thing that the media has done is convince people that the words Allahu Akbar means God is great, or Allah is great. And all of Islam is a comparative narrative. Everything is relative. Allahu Akbar, of course, means Allah is greater. When they talk about Muhammad, he's the only prophet of God. It is always relative and comparative. There is nothing original within the tenets of Islam that has not been compared to the tenets of Judaism or Christianity, and shows you that it's better than, but it has no original thought contained within it.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And the deception is ensuing, and it's very scary stuff. Depends what we do with the time left today during our interview. There's so much to say, but there's definitely a deception occurring, and we have a lot of truth tellers and brave people, but we see what's happening. We see what's happening in terms of what they're doing to Tommy Robinson. They've just taken his book down on Amazon, Muhammad's Quran, and yet Mein Kampf can be sold on Amazon. And we know what's gone off, Laura Loomer, Anne-Marie Waters, Tommy Robinson, kicked off of Twitter. We're seeing the censorship there every day, on Facebook. And so what's happening on social media very much bleeds into what's happening everywhere else, but also reflects and symbolizes it as well. And it's a very scary time, and we have to keep battling it. But this force between the left and the Islamic supremacists, it's very, very strong, very powerful, and a lot of people are just very intimidated and very cowed, and we're subdued in a lot of ways.
Jamie, what can we do other than you and I and the handful of voices that are out there that are ringing this bell, saying, "Wake up, America! You're asleep." This is, when we talk about creeping Sharia, this is creeping Sharia. It is creeping across America. And when you take a look at Ilhan Omar and how much press she is getting for anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, anti-American rhetoric as an elected member of Congress, there's never been a junior congresswoman or congressperson to ever get so much airtime as this individual, who has now taken up so much time and has really, truly exposed the narrative, but nobody's paying attention to it. They're not listening to the words she's saying, which is, we're going to find a way to subjugate you people and advance our agenda. And I'm getting this support, and I'm getting these supporters. I've got 100 people behind me that are lulled into this because this is the younger voice of the future of America. Well, if the younger voice of the future of America is predicting what's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years, then we're on the brink of being what from the first Shah of Iran, right, who was very sympathetic to the Nazi agenda in the early 30s, all the way through the fall of the second Shah, all the way through Iran being named Iran, which in Arabic means Aryan, how advanced this cause became, and what happened from 1939 to 1945 in Europe when it came to the Jews. We're seeing similar wording, similar rumblings, similar rhetoric, and now our children are being exposed to the same rhetoric in our school systems, and this is what really has me greatly concerned, is we're indoctrinating a generation and telling them it's free thinking, but in fact what it is, it's not free thinking at all. It's the propaganda of an agenda that's being advanced by the Islamist psychopath.
Well, absolutely. Look, in the end, when we think about what are we up against? Why is this so strong? And ultimately, we have to, when we get to the root of the problem, we know that there's a spiritual conflict. There's a spiritual battle here. And I talk about the utopian virus in the beginning of my book. Ultimately, it's rooted in the DNA of man. This desire, because after the fall, the desire to be God. And and we know that the left, ultimately, they are self-appointed redeemers. And that this instinct is very strong. You have to be very courageous. And you have to believe in God and accept his creation to overcome this instinct to believe in this. But in the left, there's this instinct that we can create a perfect planet. We can do it. We can build the Tower of Babel, and everybody will be equal, and everybody will be the same. And you see, we will create a perfect world. And whereas we know that what we're really supposed to do is get on our knees and ask for forgiveness from the Father and through Jesus Christ and his blood, because we are imperfect and we are sinners. But the left is the exact opposite of that. And so we're fighting against something very, very powerful here. When you see that hatred of Trump, they're just trembling. When you put it on CNN and MSNBC and you just see this hatred of Trump, there's a spiritual dynamic here. Because in many respects, he represents, and I know I'll be ridiculed for saying this. I'm not saying that Trump is a holy saint. And we know that in God's plan, God has used many people that were far from saints, okay? But what I'm saying is that he represents the idea against communism, against socialism, against all that. And they tremble because they want to be gods. It's actually very spiritual because they hate him very much because he is the reminder to them that they are not gods and cannot build a perfect planet themselves. But this is what we're up against. We're up against this. And it's very difficult to fight against it because the normal human instinct, see, even when you were talking about, let's say, the people coming into this country and what they're doing through Hijra, which is jihad by immigration, and even when you're talking about people coming in, there's already a reluctance. Oh, he's racist against a certain group of people. Oh, you see, in the left, you can't have that. Just everybody's good. Everybody's okay. Once you start targeting one group, it means you're bad and racist. Now, don't get me wrong. You can target Trump supporters. Of course, we know that hypocrisy. But the key here is that we're not talking about race. We're talking about the followers of a certain ideology. But what we're going up against is that goes very much against the utopian virus that infects people, because once you accept the fact that there's an evil ideology that people follow, it completely ruins their plan because they're building a heaven on earth. How can they build a heaven on earth if there's this ideology that a lot of evil people follow? It ruins their plan. Now, it doesn't rule their plan in the sense of they've got to get rid of the Trump supporters and the people who believe in things that they're opposed to. But that's what we're up against, Rabbi Eric. And it's a very, we're fighting against a tide, but there's a lot of there's a lot of things we can do. Just off the top of my head, programs like yours, we support truth tellers. And one of the things I just want to emphasize is that conservatives have a problem, and that they believe that canceling their cable is fighting culture war. This is the problem. Antonio Gramsci taught his troops, capture the culture. Don't worry about politics. Capture the culture, because once you got the culture, you got political power. And they followed his tactics. Then they followed Alinsky, but they succeeded. They succeeded because once you got the culture, you have power. And conservatives, unfortunately, I know so many conservatives, if a jihadist comes to my front doorstep, I'm going to shoot him on my front doorstep. You should be engaged in a culture battle where you prevent this jihadist from being in the culture in the first place. Write letters to the editor, join free loving groups, fight for the freedom of this country, engage in the cultural dialogue and in the cultural battle, because in so doing, you'll be able to shape what's going on and to have some kind of influence.
Amen. Amen. It's an ideology. It's not a religion. A religion doesn't have a set of laws. A religion doesn't cut off your head for not believing, but an ideology does. And we have to make sure that we don't apply the freedom of religion to freedom of ideology, because an ideology that is opposed to the Constitution of the United States, that is opposed to the freedoms afforded to every American, every citizen of this country, is being brought into question when we take a look at advancing this ideology. I want to encourage you to go to Jamie Glazov, glazov.com, to find more about the Glazov gang, about his books, about his guests, his programs, John Guandola, Assessing the Threat, all of this, all these access points right there through his website. And get a copy of his book, Jihadist Psychopath, How He's Charming, Seducing, and Devouring Us. Jamie Glazov of the Glazov gang, it has been an honor and a privilege to meet you, my friend, and you are always welcome here on Revealing the Truth. Us truth tellers have to stick together, and the more of us that stick together, the broader our base will be, the more influence we'll be able to have on the culture and the culture war. God bless you, my friend.
Honor to be here, and we know that wherever 2 or 3 people are gathered in his name,
there he will be right in the midst of us, and he's right here in the center of the United Nations Broadcasting Network. And Jamie Glazov, many blessings to you, my friend. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.